This is BYU Sports Nation, presented by the BYU Store. Simulcast on BYU TV and BYU Radio. Now live from Studio C, it's Spencer Linton and Jarom Jordan.
Party like a rock star. BYU Sports Nation is live, your day-to-day play-by-play in Studio C, presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere. It is Thursday, August 11th, wherever and however you are connected. Wonderful to have you with us. I am Spencer Linton, teamed up alongside a man who 100% knows his walkout song when he takes the field of competition, Jarom Jordan.
Creed higher, said no one. Nickelback, look at this graph! Yeah, out of tune on purpose. Okay, so Edwin Diaz of the Mets, formerly of the Mariners, has this really awesome like trumpet, solo mariachi style when he comes out, and the crowd's like super into it. And Mr. Met or whatever, their mascot, whatever his name is, he's got the trumpet going. Anyway, so Roger Sherman of The Ringer last night was like, I've thought long and hard about this, and I think the NFL needs this. I think it needs to happen when a punter comes on the field. So we made our own version of that with a different song with Ryan Rico. So this is what it would look like.
He's your closer.
Yeah, he comes in to do a job, right? So Hinckley Rapazzi, they don't get the conversion there. In comes Ryan Rico. This is what we need. Just
seal the deal, Ryan. And hit him back on the one.
And listen, Edwin Diaz, Hispanic, it makes sense, to have more Hispanic type music. I like that. Whatever Ryan Rico wants, like a baseball player, the walk-up song. He could have whatever. It doesn't have to be, a Latin trumpet of sorts. But that would be fun. I think the punters should have like a song.
I think my walkout song should be Marlins Will Soar by Scott Stapp.
This is a favorite of ours.
Or maybe Friday by Rebecca Black.
Yeah, either one. Terrible. That would be funny. Like, obviously a punter isn't the closer per se, but like it would be funny. So Robbie McCombs on Twitter said, well, what if like when Mason Wake and Houston Hamuli came down on 3rd and 1 at the goal line? They come in and it's like some song that just gets everybody juiced. By the way, I was told this story yesterday at BYU Photo Day. I wanted to share it. Against Georgia Southern, BYU's lacking a little bit of juice at the end of the third quarter. It's a close game. It feels like BYU might lose this weird game in Georgia. You were there. All of a sudden,
super weird, a
song plays. Now, this same song is the song that BYU football plays before every game. I'm not going to say what the song is, it's for the team. They play a song that gets them jacked coming out of the locker room. Georgia Southern, unbeknownst to them, plays the same song BYU always plays to leave the locker room, and good gosh, they went crazy on the sideline, and it jolted BYU back to life, and they win that game. How about that?
Oh, I witnessed it firsthand.
And then the burrito was thrown.
You have awakened the beast.
They played the same song.
Be careful.
And the team went nuts. They loved it.
We need some walkout music for this show lineup, frankly. Let the beat drop on the number one thing BYU football can accomplish in this upcoming season. What do the Cougars have to accomplish in their final year of independence? Chris Brooks, the transfer running back, goes one-on-one with Jarom Jordan. Don't want to miss that. Plus, the coolest pilot picture you have ever seen.
It's so awesome.
It is unbelievable. All that and more coming up. But first, bring on today's BYU Sports Nation headlines.
BYU football held its photo day in the indoor practice facility yesterday for headshots, team photo, position groups, and other media needs. The Cougars are holding practice number 6 today.
Harvey Longy and the Patriots back to work. Longy in his second season with New England as they kick off against the New York Giants. His second season, meaning after he had his brief walk away from the Patriots because he went to the Jets, among some other places. Then this will be the first NFL preseason game with a former Cougar playing this season. This opens the floodgates, Jarom.
Yep, let's go.
For this weekend.
Because you know what we have tomorrow? Tyler Algier and the Falcons against Jamal Williams, Mr. Hard Knocks himself, and the Lions.
Yeah.
I mean, that's going to be awesome, man. Number 3, women's soccer is the preseason pick to win the West Coast Conference. 8 of a possible 9 first-place votes among the coaches. Santa Clara ranked 5th in the country, picked to finish 2nd. Pepperdine number 17, 3rd. I mean, it's a fantastic soccer conference. Jamie Shepard, Leveni Vaca, who was on the show yesterday, and Olivia Smith are preseason all West Coast Conference selections. And last night, the Cougars held their alumni game, winning 9-0. Welcome back to South Field, moms. Thanks to 4 goals from Bella Felino.
Bella doing her thing. We were talking about her and her potential the other day.
Big time, man.
Courtney Wayman continues the best year ever. Like,
she's so awesome, dude.
For a female at BYU. This is
Male,
unbelievable.
female,
Okay.
it don't matter.
She finished sixth at the Monaco Diamond League with the third fastest time in the steeplechase ever by a United States woman. Her finishing time was 9:09. Now, I just want you to listen to what she has accomplished the last year, Jarom, okay? NCAA title, NCAA record, first United States team, and a few days after her 24th birthday does what we just talked about at the Monaco. Magic at Monaco for Courtney Wayman.
Her year has been better than yours. Whoever, yours, mine,
Her
everybody.
personal best
Like,
entering the season last year was 9:23, so she's regularly besting that by like 15 seconds.
that's a ridiculous amount. That's crazy. And former Cougars Paisley and Connor Harding signed to play in Germany. Paisley with the Giro Live Panthers Osnabrück.
Yeah.
And Connor with WWU baskets. That's not a wrestling
Woo baskets.
woo woo baskets.
All rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending.
You're talking about it, and so are we. It's What's Trending on BYU Sports Nation.
The final Independence Tour for BYU football, just over 3 weeks away. That tour begins in Tampa at the home of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Raymond James Stadium against USF.
In how many days?
Countdown to the Bulls.
23 days.
23 days.
I'm Michael Jordan.
Exact.
Yeah.
Come on now. We are 3 weeks from Saturday from a game. Not a practice, a game. And BYU has, we think, some things to prove. Certainly, they want to get a little bit of vengeance against USF and Jaron Hall specifically for what happened, and maybe prove some things that the BYU team can go on the road to Florida early in the season and win a game there. But Jarom, it goes without saying, BYU has bigger fish to fry. So specifically, what does BYU have to prove this year in their final year of independence?
I'm saying three things, okay? One is BYU proving it's ready to go into the Big 12 and not just be in the Big 12, but compete. In the Big 12, right? You need to show well against Power Fives. You need to win 10-plus games again, right? Yep. If you can do that against this schedule, BYU's got a good team, but like this schedule, you got 4 top 25 teams walking into the season. Hey, that's something. I think just like 2021 needed to validate 2020, I think 22 needs to validate 21 to some degree.
You believe there needs to be some more validation?
Let me explain why. What we don't want is for 21 to have been an anomaly. Like, oh, BYU went 6-1 versus Power 5s, 5-0 versus Pac-12. Well, that was the exception. What we want is for BYU this year to go like 4-1 against those P5s again and be like, yeah, BYU can
even
play
a winning
well.
record. Even a winning record.
I'd take 3-2. Yeah, 3-2 would be tremendous, especially because these teams are better than the teams BYU played last year. And then the other thing is to finish off the rivals in style.
Sure.
Or just win, period. Utah State and Boise State are two teams that BYU may not play for a while again.
Yes.
We don't know.
Yes.
I hope BYU plays Utah State occasionally.
Yeah.
I don't need a Boise State game anymore because Boise State's a good program. You're playing a Power 5 schedule. I would like to play Utah almost every year. It sounds like, well, I'd like to play them every year. But it sounds like BYU and Utah aren't going to play every year. We're thinking, I don't know, 6 to 8 times a decade. So finish off the rivals. Utah State, you're not complaining about. Boise State won last year. We know all that drama. So those are the three things that stick out that BYU sort of has to prove this year.
Sure. Everybody's watching BYU under a microscope, especially in Big 12 country. All right, what are the Cougars made of? Let's see. Like, we know what they did last year. But now that they have the Power 5 invite and it's been a little while and we're bearing down on that date, like, they're going to be under a microscope for sure. Like, are they really a Power 5 team? Can they really compete in the Big 12? Let's see. They'll have Texas and Oklahoma in there for the first 2 years. Is BYU a team that can actually win a Big 12 title? Those things will be discussed and looked at. So I'm with you on that. Proving some things that you can go and absolutely compete right away to win a Big 12 division, if there are divisions, who knows, or get to a Big 12 championship game.
I'd take a division title because that means you're probably in a New Year's Six. Now, we'll see if, like you said, if there are divisions at all.
The second thing that I thought about was BYU has some individuals that need to prove their mettle and their worth in NFL eyes.
Yeah.
Like, this season is so critical for a guy like Jaron Hall. Mm-hmm. This could legitimately, like, if he plays okay, maybe he's like a 5th or 6th round draft pick. He's late running. If he's not good to great, then he slides, right? So this season
he could be undrafted, right?
Exactly.
Like, he can go first undrafted.
It can go so poorly that it's
Yes.
like, oh, man, he just kind of fell off the radar. But if Jaron plays well, then we're talking about maybe pushing his draft stock from third round or fourth round up into the first round. So that is what, on an individual basis, a guy like Jaron Hall has a lot to prove this year, that he is an NFL quarterback and not just getting into the league, but a guy that can go and be an impact player. Like, if he's the first-round draft pick, he's the future for a team.
Yes, and he has to play all 13 games, Spence, in my opinion, to really prove that. Now, he could play like 11 or 12.
His durability is
probably
in question.
Yes. He needs to have luck in that regard and skill to avoid certain situations. That being injured happens sometimes, and especially when you have the rock as much as a quarterback.
There are plenty of other guys on this BYU team that feel like they are NFL players. Puka Nacua, Isaac Rex, Blake Freeland, and Campbell Barrington are on Clark Barrington are on most NFL draft boards. Yeah, Campbell later, right? We expect Campbell to show up there too.
Totally.
All of those guys have a lot to prove.
Keenan.
Those guys off the radar, I'm glad you brought them up. That's who I'm getting to next. Is they're a little bit off the radar. They can play themselves into an NFL spot with a great season and their own durability.
Yes, whether that's picked or not. Because we've seen a lot of BYU players have lengthy NFL careers that weren't drafted.
Sure.
Daniel Sorensen, undrafted. Taysom Hill, undrafted.
Like Michael Davis.
There's undrafted guys that make an impact, right? And then there's the highly drafted guys who are doing great stuff. Kyle Van Noy, Fred Warner, and others. Jamal Williams.
Right. And I know it's a team game. I totally get that. But, let's not overlook the fact that these individuals can set themselves up in a major way for their NFL careers with a great season as a team. When you win as a team, people typically notice. You have more eyeballs. You're in more ranked windows. The networks can put you in better positions to be seen.
Dax Milne's a great example of this. If Zach isn't the number 2 pick, I'm not sure Zach's drafted. Dax would get into a camp and compete and probably make that roster regardless. But the idea of getting yourself into the 7th round, did Chris Wilcox get in the 7th round because BYU had a stellar year? I think so. Obviously his speed and skill are number 1, but when you watch Zach Wilson film, you're staring at that left tackle too. 3rd round, Brady Christensen. That all helps. It builds on each other.
Yes. BYU can prove that they have fully adjusted to handling a Power 5 schedule this year.
2 years in a row is now a streak.
Exactly.
It's a trend. It's not a one-off.
Then you can throw 2020 out with I didn't play anybody in 2020. It's
now
2021 and 2022, they went 6-1 against 7 Power 5s in 2021. If BYU has a winning record against what we think are going to be tougher Power 5 opponents than last year this year, then it's okay, they're ready for the Power 5. So to me, that might be the most important thing, Jarom, is that when BYU knows they have at least 9 or 10 Power 5 games on the schedule, if they can put back-to-back years like this, they've shown me, they have proven that they are ready to transition. It won't be like this crazy hard learning curve when they go to the Big 12. No, their schedules have prepared them, and it will be a slight step up, not just major smack in the face of going from 3 or 4 Power 5s to 10.
And this is why I don't pound the schedule anymore, because the purpose of the schedule changed. All of a sudden, BYU's P5 became a ramp. Or Independence became a ramp to
getting
P5.
Them ready.
Yes, if BYU goes 3-2 this year and they're 9-3 in the last 2 years against Power 5s, they're ready for the Big 12. Now, will BYU have the same personnel to compete in the same way going into next season? They would need a lot of transfers.
Hopefully they can recruit that talent at a better level because they've played so well.
That's the hope. The reality is BYU's not going to replace 1-for-1 Jaron Hall, Puka Nacua,
Blake Freeland,
Peyton Will. There's going to be a lot of dudes. But you do put Kingsley Suamatia suddenly at left tackle starting next year. You put Campbell Barrington, maybe in Clark's spot. The hope is that you can approximate that and develop and get young guys experience. The reality is next year is going to be a different expectation going into the first year of the Big 12. That's okay. I'm eyeballing 2024 as okay, can BYU get after that first year? Now we're ready to win this title and send Oklahoma and Texas to the SEC and at least compete. I'm not saying BYU needs to win the title. Just compete. And I'm excited about what BYU has done with this group. You got to be able to keep Aaron Roderick in this process, and Fessy and these tremendous coaches who have helped build this. They've locked in Kalani. It's an exciting future right now. 2022 is going to be an awesome season, then let's go from there.
The schedule, to me, this year, if they can handle it, certainly proves that they are ready for the Big 12.
If you can handle 22, you can compete for a title in the Big 12.
Prove that this year. That's what BYU can prove.
And with that said, 23 is going to be, will require some great recruiting to compete for a championship.
And like you were saying, proving that they can handle the schedule also would include wins over all of those rivals that you might not see for a while. All those are all great. Those are all feel-good things. That's like, hey, see you in a while. We just kicked your butt. Okay.
I'll take a 1-point win over both. Like, I don't even. Yeah,
beat
margin doesn't matter.
USF, beat Baylor, stun Notre Dame. You know, if you want to get angry that they're not coming to pro, all of those opportunities are out there, right?
Listen, be Michael Jordan in The Last Dance, and I took that
Ruin
personally.
Boise State's run at a potential G5 New Year's 6 spot.
They ain't doing that.
On.
They don't have the team to do that.
True,
No, it's just beat them.
What? Hank Bachmeier? Are you kidding me?
They won't do that despite having the greatest quarterback in college football history.
All right. Engaging conversation that we would like all of you to join and answer our question. What does BYU football have to prove this season in 2022? Let's go to Voice of the Nation.
This is the Voice of the Nation on BYU Sports Nation.
Hiram Farmer answers on Instagram.
Sorry, what?
Hiram Farmer.
Hiram Farmer. That is a strong.
Please tell me you do not live in Logan or Ogden. Okay.
That's a strong name, dude.
Actually, I love Hiram. That's a strong.
That's a strong.
Yes, correct. That's a man. He says Tyler Algier was good, but the entire team was good too last year. BYU needs to prove it can still play at the same level as last year, if not at a higher level, with tougher games this year while losing the workhorse on the ground. There is something to be said about losing Tyler Algier and still being awesome and just being like, hey, you know what? That was a huge void. We filled it, and we might even be better than we were last year.
We have a lot of trust in the BYU offense, the offensive line, Aaron Rodgers, but Christopher Brooks specifically, which my one-on-one with him is coming up next segment. That's a great point. Travis Tingy on Twitter. This year BYU has to prove that at their best, they're a contender for a New Year's Six.
Okay.
They belong not only with Power 5 or Power 4 layout, nice, but potentially a Power 2 setup down the road. People will judge BYU's ceiling based on this year. I think if BYU went 9-4, people would still be like, dude, BYU's good. BYU doesn't have to have like an 11-1, 10-2 to be like, they're in the mix. People respect BYU. And that's 40 years in the making, but it's also the recent, right?
I want nothing more than for BYU to be in that conversation once again. Just be like, it was so fun. Even though BYU didn't get into a New Year's Six game last year, they were discussed all year. And the Pac-12 de facto championship was picked up by the national media. That was so much fun.
Yes.
10-2 against that schedule got BYU notice. Even if they don't get into a New
calling the
Year's
regular
Six.
season record now.
Yeah.
We're just going to ignore the ball game now.
Whatever.
We're going to a P5. We weren't motivated.
Even if BYU doesn't get into a New Year's Six, if they win a lot of games and are ranked in the top 15 all year, it is so much fun to watch that and just see how the media handles that.
Let's hope BYU can go into November like 6-2. And just
a shot.
Can we get to 10-2?
Still in the mix.
Okay, coming up, an oddly specific prediction from The Athletic for the BYU football season.
And we've teased it now a couple of times, so let's talk about it again. Jarom goes one-on-one with the new running back, y'all. What's his plan to fill that void left by Tyler Algier? This is BYU Sports Nation.
Let's just say he won the match.
This is where we dominate. Our playground, place of business. This is our promised land, where we seek to find ourselves. And we're here to make sure the spaces our best prove themselves on appear how they should. Intermountain Healthcare, official medical provider for BYU Athletics.
Welcome to a partnership where customer experience comes first. It's our focus. It's your expectation. We provide support to those that go the extra mile for all of us. Supplying products, training, and service for generations. Learn more at bradyindustries.com.
Paul Brandt is laying his guitar aside and picking up a hammer.
There actually are things that can be done to help people in situations like this.
This is our house for real.
I don't think you can ever dream too much.
As the receivers become the givers, they in turn help themselves. Watch Paul Brandt's Build It Forward on BYU TV or with the free app.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
How about a top 10 matchup coming up this weekend on BYU Radio?
Yes, please.
The app specifically, 6 Eastern time Saturday, as number 3 BYU goes to number 10 North Carolina. This is an exhibition game, but I dare say it's the greatest exhibition game in the history of BYU sports.
They have a huge promo night for North Carolina women's soccer over there because BYU's coming to town.
Also because they want to get the crowd there, and the students aren't on campus yet.
For sure.
But huge game, man. We'll get a taste of how good BYU is after this game.
Greg Wrubell is the only way to take in that game.
Yeah.
There's no video streaming. North Carolina doesn't have any radio coverage. He is the lone voice of that game.
Listen in, baby.
We are live in Studio C. This is your day-to-day BYU sports play-by-play. I am Spencer Linton, teamed up alongside Jarom Jordan, who was a busy man at Media Day yesterday.
Yeah, I spoke with RB1 Christopher Brooks about spring and now fall camp, his fellow running backs, and expectations this season. All right, Chris, what do you prefer, man?
Whatever you're comfortable with, I don't care. You know,
Topher?
You can go Chris.
Now you prefer Chris?
Yeah, Chris.
That's awesome. So obviously we've talked about your transfer from Cal to here. Now that you've been here in spring, it's been a week and a half of fall ball. How's Provo been? How's BYU been for you?
It's been fun. You know, it's been fun being able to hang out with the bros. You know, spend time with my teammates. You know, we're finally hitting the football field, so it's been great.
You feel like you fit in well since you were here in spring, and now you know the guys, you know the offense, that kind of thing?
Yeah, I feel like I fit in great, you know, and that's part of the guys, you know, helping my adjustment pretty, smooth, so it's been good.
I'm sure this is what you wanted, but you're expected to do a lot, to be RB1. What's that like knowing, okay, if you have a great year, which we hope you do, hey, you got a shot at having a special season and hopefully the NFL, right?
I'm just taking it day by day, you know. Any way I can help my teammates, I'm going to just do what I can, you know, whatever I do for other 10 guys on the field. And so that's as much as I'm going to do, and, however I can help.
You're Christopher Brooks. You're not Tyler Ogier. You do what you do, right? But there's this sense of people aren't that worried with you coming in here. What's that like to know that you have the confidence of a lot of people of, hey, even though BYU lost a tremendous running back, we've got a capable dude in that spot this year?
It feels great, but, it all comes down to, practice day by day and just finding something to get better at, Find at least one thing to get better at every day, and I think our coaches do a great job of coaching us. I think we'll be just fine.
What do you feel like you do well?
As far as what, football or life or?
Yes.
Football.
Yes.
All right, football.
Both.
All right. Well, in football, I think I do well with having my teammates back. I think I do well with making sure that they know I do anything for them. In life, I just want to be a good person, really. Yeah.
That's awesome. You getting a graduate degree right now? You working on that? Or are you still an undergrad?
Post-bac degree.
Yes.
Kind of, it's a confusing situation. So post-bachelorette basically means you take credits to stay eligible to play football.
Gotcha.
Basically mean. Yeah.
Awesome.
So you could choose to stay longer and get the degree if you wish, or you can just leave,
Yeah. What did you do an undergrad in at Cal?
Psychology.
What do you want to do with that, if anything?
I think I'm start a couple businesses. Probably go down that route.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
There's a good MBA school here too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll check that out.
Yeah. Okay, we're talking to Christopher Brooks on BYU Sports Nation. So you talked about what you did well. Aaron Roderick mentioned the other day that you're a tremendous pass catcher. What role does that play in your game this year outside of actually running the ball?
I think, to be a running back, you got to be able to catch the ball as well as you can run it and block it. So you got to be able to do all of those things. If you can only do one or the other, look at running backs these days, you got to do it all. So, yeah.
Okay, let's walk through some of your fellow running backs. Tell me what you really like about their game or their person. Lopini Katoa.
Pini, he has great hands, great vision, great feet.
Jackson.
McChesney, one of the stronger running backs. He knows the offense really well, and he brings experience.
Miles Davis.
Miles is probably one of our fastest running backs. Yeah, that's all you need. Speed.
Speed
kills.
baby. Speed kills.
Yeah.
Mason Fakahua.
Mason Fakahua. Mason, he's really intentional with what he does in regards to the cuts he makes and how he reads plays.
Let's talk about the offensive line. You played football for a long time. The expectation is that this group is really, really good. What do you like about who they are and what they do?
I like that they do work hard every day. And, part of the reasons because, their coach, does not play around. And
Daryl Funk.
Yeah.
Hey,
yeah.
Let's go.
You go to practice, you're going to hear him. So, they're pushed, and I think that they have a great edge on their shoulders.
Okay, in terms of size, like of O-lines you've played with and seen, it seemed like a big group. What do you see?
Yeah, I'd say.
Can you see anything?
Yeah.
When you're running?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Not that short, but no, but yeah.
Well, I mean, like they take up space.
Oh yeah, they do take up space. And it's nice because they got some size on them.
I can't call a guy taller than me short, right?
Right.
You're not short.
It's like, hey,
but
shorty.
Dude, Braden Keim, even the back 6'8", dude.
Right.
Like Blake Freeland and these guys. What did they bring to the table in terms of physicality and kind of aggression that you think will be successful against Baylor, Oregon, Notre Dame, Arkansas?
Yeah, I think they're great technicians, and I think they do a great job with their hands and feet. And I think that's just something they work on daily. And so when they harness those skills, they play at their best. Those guys are good.
Talk to me about Jaron Hall. What's he like as a quarterback from your viewpoint?
My dog, Jaron. Jaron, he's a real seasoned, experienced guy who, he's really in control, and he has confidence in himself, and I think that, that helps him, play calm and kind of just play through everything.
What was your perception of kind of what BYU did last year, especially going 5-0 against the Pac-12, being a Pac-12 player last year?
In college football, anybody can win. Anybody can win. That's one thing, anybody has to understand is that, that's probably the reason why college football is, the greatest sport. Because anybody can win at any time. It doesn't matter. And so, you got a great team who plays hard. With the edge on their shoulders, that just shows that, you could beat anybody.
You getting along with the Stanford guy, Houston Hamwillie?
Yeah. Got along with him pretty well, Our roommate, yeah. See him every day, so.
The nickname of, your roommate?
Yeah.
How's he as a roommate?
Yeah, he's awesome. He's awesome.
He clean up?
Yeah.
Do the dishes?
Yeah. Yeah, he does. He does.
Houston is a good dude. Yeah. Not everyone watches I have former roommates too. I know how it is. I know how it is. The Game is maybe one of the best, if not the best, nicknames of any college football rivalry. What was it like to play in The Game? Cal and
the big
Stanford?
game. The big game.
Yeah.
That was fun. There's a lot of history in that rivalry. It goes back all the way, before the 1900s. And so it was fun. And a lot of people cared about that game. And it was always fun playing them. Nice physical game. See them again this year. Except it's not rivalry. It's just another game.
It's Chris Brooks versus Stanford with BYU, which will be fun.
Right.
Talk to me about games that stick out on the schedule for you in terms of quality opponents and an opportunity, obviously, to showcase what BYU can do and what you can do.
Yeah, I think USF or UCF. What is it?
USF.
USF.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that. I think that game sticks out. Because
that's a veteran answer, by the way. The first one.
Hey. Been here. I've been doing this.
You've done this a minute.
I've done this a few times.
Is that your first rodeo?
Yeah, not first rodeo, but yeah, first game. Always most important.
Yeah. More serious question here. What have you overcome in your life that's helped you become who you are?
What have I overcome? I think that the trials and tribulations that I have. I don't really know any specifics, but I do know that anytime I make a mistake or anytime that I misjudge something or make the wrong decision, I always learn from it. That's
awesome. Who are some of the major influencers in your life, whether that be family or otherwise?
Major influencers in my life. I really don't have any. I really don't have any. It's kind of weird because I get asked that question a lot. You know, it's like who impacts you or who do you look up to? And I really don't look up to anybody. I kind of just go with the flow and kind of like self-motivated, and I let my experiences mold me into the man I am today. And I think that kind of guides me, and that gives me that edge, you know, gives me that passion, why I love football, why I want to be, you know, great. You know, I think that's kind of why.
Chris, it was fun talking to you, man. Best of luck this year.
Appreciate it.
Chris Brooks, Jarom, he's ready to roll.
He's ready to rock. Last year, he averaged 5.2 yards per carry, 6.9 yards per catch. Had 21 total touchdowns at Cal. He is a Lopini type in his versatility. Obviously a different player physically, but he's RB1, and then you could argue at 1B is going to be Lopini. So it's going to be a fun season rushing.
Yeah, the conversation we had the other day about how much of a role he's going to have in the pass-catching game is a fun one, because I thought he was at his best at Cal when he was that guy.
Just get him the ball, like in any way. I'm excited to see what he can do on offense, man. And Aaron Roderick said he's further developed as a pass catcher than Tyler was.
Yeah. How do they implement that with a little nuance in the offense?
Okay, coming up, did we just see Zach Wilson's best practice throw with the Jets? I thought we were discussing that last week. You had a great one last week.
And if BYU could ruin one college football team's playoff hopes based on their schedule this year, which team do you want to see BYU absolutely wreck? This is BYU Sports Nation.
Introducing the Truck for Adventure. The all-new 2022 Nissan Frontier doesn't compromise on power or comfort. This midsize truck was redesigned to incorporate the latest technology and designs for safety, comfort, and convenience. Plus, with up to 6,700 pounds of towing capacity and best-in-class horsepower, it's rugged enough for adventure and still safe enough to transport all your favorite people. Where's your new Frontier? You'll find it at Tim Dowling Nissan Southtown and South Jordan.
Luxurious blanket. Getting cozy with family and friends. A gift for everyone. Minky Couture, official luxury blanket of BYU Athletics.
Hey family, if you're looking for something new to watch, stop scrolling and start streaming. BYU TV has a ton of great options to binge together. From bold adventure to family drama and even a little fun, there's something for everyone. Binge entire series, experience all the feels, immerse in non-stop intrigue, and treat yourself to unexpected turns. Think you know BYU TV? We're just getting started.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
This is BYU Sports Nation. Interact with the show, the content throughout the day, fall camp coverage. Follow us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and TikTok.
He is Jarom. I am Spencer. Welcome back to the show. It's time to whip it. Cougar Whip Round presented by Maersk, your e-commerce logistics shipping partner.
The Athletic made oddly specific predictions for their preseason top 25 teams, saying BYU would have the same amount of giveaways, turnovers, 12 as last year. If I told you that happened this fall, what's your win total based on that number alone?
I think the same as last year, 10 wins. Whether or not you want to throw in the bowl game or not to get to those 10 wins, fine, whatever. But if you only have 12 giveaways, which over 13 games is less than one per game, you are doing a fantastic job with ball security. I liked it in the article. They did say BYU committed those 12 turnovers, and then they say the Cougars will have the same number or fewer miscues this fall. That's a fun idea. What if they have fewer? Then what happens?
It was fun. Then it's 10 or 11 wins. I think it's 9 to 10 wins if it's 12 again. Fewer would be incredible. Jaron Hall took care of the ball so well. Only 5 picks. BYU coughed it up 7 times and fumbles, 3 of which came in the Boise State game.
Right. Okay, so there were 4 turnovers in the Boise State game.
And a pick.
You're
4 of the 12.
You're telling me 4 of the 12 happened in one game? That was the outlier. You want to know how BYU lost to Boise State? 4 turnovers in the season. They only turned over 12 total times.
12 is incredible. BYU will be hard-pressed to do that again. That's really hard.
Really tough.
That's really hard.
Really tough. All right, college football writer Tom Fornelli lists BYU as one of 5 chaos teams most capable of unexpectedly destroying somebody's season and college football playoff hopes. If BYU could wreck one team's college football playoff hopes, based on the opponents on their schedule, which team would you choose?
There's only 3 that have playoff hopes: Notre Dame, Baylor, and Oregon. Notre Dame. I just think a win over Notre Dame always matters. We still talk about 94 and 04, even though those Notre Dame teams weren't good.
I kind of want Boise State to be undefeated when BYU plays them. I want Boise State to be really good. That's not going to happen.
They won't. But they do have Hank Bachmeier.
It would be fantastic if they were in a position where BYU could go in there and be like, it was cute while it lasted. You're undefeated in the top 20. But we got our vengeance, and now your perfect season is over. So I would love for that to work out, that BYU could ruin Boise State's season because, I'm petty and vindictive for what happened last year and the rivalry in play.
Yeah.
But beating Notre Dame and, BYU becoming they're the independent team that could sneak into the New Year's Six now. Notre Dame's out of it. That would be a lot of fun.
And if Notre Dame beats Ohio State in week 1, great game. Notre Dame's cooking. Let's hope they beat Ohio State just to make that more interesting. ESPN's Pete Thamel released a list of top 25 up-and-coming potential future head coaches in college football. He listed Aaron Roderick at 18. BYU has another great season this year. Should BYU be worried A-Rod could leave for a head coaching job?
Yeah, they should always be worried. Anytime your offense is cooking like this, and he's placed now, we think after this year, back-to-back BYU quarterbacks in the NFL, maybe back-to-back first-round NFL quarterbacks.
Sweet.
Then, people start to pay even more attention to Aaron. They're like, what are they doing over there? So, yeah, I'd be worried. I'd be worried right now, just based on what he's done. I'm sure teams are looking at him right now.
They got to pay him what a lower-level G5 pays, just in case. They got to keep paying him because Aaron Roderick is the key, obviously, to what's happening on offense. Not only as a recruiter, but a play caller. Just incredible.
Hey, Rod, please stay in Provo.
Yeah.
As long as you like.
I think he loves it here. I think he's happy here. He's home, right? He's able to let loose, unlike what Utah did with him. Hey, Utah, you could have had this. You could have had this. You didn't let him. He's a peacock. He's got to fly.
Hey, Rod, you don't need to go anywhere else. You don't need to go anywhere else. Hey, just be an offensive coordinator here forever. Just see Doug Scoville. He left for the NFL. He was unhappy. He came back to BYU.
Aaron Roderick is hereby called as emeritus offensive coordinator. All those in favor, please make it manifest, okay?
Yes. Big Game Boomer has released a list ranking the best coordinator duos in college football.
We're
expanding it from Aaron Roderick to Aaron Roderick and Eli Tuiaki.
Hashtag drop 8, baby.
He has them at number 20 overall. Is that mark too high, too low, or just right?
I think it's just right. The combination of those guys is really good. E gets hammered a lot for the drop 8. Hey, the numbers are good enough, and most seasons pretty good, actually. And BYU doesn't win 10 games in spite of the defense. They won it with it.
We think BYU is a top 20 team overall. Well, you can look right to their coordinators. So, yeah, it feels like they're right at number 20. We think that's where BYU is going to show up. It's totally fair.
I think A-Rod's a top 10 offensive coordinator, personally, yeah. Okay, Zach Wilson went viral again yesterday for another great throw in practice. Is this the best throw by Zach this offseason? This is side-armed into Elijah Moore's incredible hands.
I love that Elijah Moore quote tweeted this and was like, Swaggy Z. Swaggy Z is a new one. I haven't heard that one for Zach Wilson yet.
That's good.
Well played.
Swag Daddy, Swaggy Z.
Well, and it's almost like, he's kind of looking at it, but he's like looking at Elijah out of the side of his eyes. So it's almost like a misdirection throw, too, with the sidearm.
Everyone wants to be Patrick
The
Mahomes.
NFL picked it up. The NFL put it out there. I was like, holy, Zach Wilson.
Zach has more highlights coming out from the NFL than touchdowns last year. I'm excited because he had 9. I'm excited for that number to be 20 plus for Zach.
Sure. And he was injured for a few games last year.
Yeah.
Right?
And he played for the Jets.
Courtney Wayman, we talked about her at the top of the show. 7th best year ever. Ran the 3rd fastest steeplechase time by a United States woman ever last night. She finished 6th at the Monaco Diamond League. These are the best runners in the world in large part, Jarom.
Yes.
Has any BYU athlete had a better year this past year than Courtney?
Only one person can rival it in some way. It's Michaela Clough.
Okay.
Because she's the Herman Trophy finalist, best player in BYU history, helps them to their best finish ever, national runner-up, gets married, USA U23 team, and now she's in the NWSL. So, pretty good year.
Yeah, that's
she's
true.
the only person that can rival it.
Yeah. I mean, Whitney Orton had a fantastic year, but it's not quite Courtney Wayman and Michaela Clough, right?
Yes. Winning a natty, even Connor Mann's like, won a natty, it's like, well, what else?
All incredible. Now, if you want to extend that conversation to former BYU athletes over the past year, then it gets a little more interesting with another soccer player, Ashley Hatch. She was the Golden Boot winner in the National Women's Soccer League. She won an ESPY for the best NWSL player.
Her team won the title.
And she's playing with Team USA, the senior women's national team. Like, she's had a pretty good year as well. But that's kind of an expanded conversation outside of BYU.
I love that we have several that have had amazing years. Hey, fun to be at Brigham, man.
Well done. Well done to the women. My goodness.
Bringing it. Honestly, women better than the men. Here, let's go. Hey, men, show up. Coming up, rise and shout out to a BYU fan whose helmet is elite. This is one of the best things we've seen all year.
Truly elite. Top Gun energy. Plus, BYU women's volleyball assistant coach Dave Hyte takes a break from practice to join us live. He saw Aaron skipping out on practice and was like, hey, I want to skip out on practice too. This is BYU Sports Nation.
Media obligations.
Letting you know when your company joins the BYU team as a corporate partner, your brand can be featured in sports programming on BYU TV and BYU Radio. In addition to all of the great games, you can be part of the BYU coaches shows, place your message in Countdown to Kickoff, basketball pre- and post-game shows, and each weekday on BYU Sports Nation. We invite your team to join ours and become a corporate sponsor of BYU Athletics. For details, email sponsorship@byu.edu today.
I know what it's like to be overlooked, to be doubted, to fly under the radar. I only had one offer coming out of high school, but I was ready for every moment, every opportunity, and every shot that I got. Now I'm playing professional basketball, aiming to be one of the best shooters on the planet. And I'm just getting started. Be ready for your moment with Rapid Reboot, the future of rapid recovery.
Trio Orem Senior Living believes in empowering seniors to live life to the fullest. We help eliminate stress out of daily life when you live at Trio. Less time focusing on housework means you can socialize at one of our many events, with safety in mind, of course. And did we mention our spacious apartments with modern amenities? Learn more about setting up a private tour at trioorem.com.
Uh-oh. Do you not know the groom's name?
I missed it on our first date, and it's way too late to ask.
Whenever you experience something funny, the first thing you want to do is like share it with your loved ones. Seeing that comedy like helped us through things, that we want to use that to help other people in a way.
We had one kid whose make-a-wish was to come to Studio C. It made me be like, these goofy sketches mean a lot to people.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
Women's volleyball is back in 2 weeks and a day from now. All 16 women's volleyball matches live on BYU TV and or the app, including the season opener August 26th against Ryder at 2 Eastern.
Welcome back to BYU Sports Nation. We are live in Studio C. It's time because, you know, this is what we do now a couple of times a week. We help a player or a coach get out of practice a little bit. And
if they practice during the show, we got you.
Yeah, specifically it's Dave Hyte, assistant women's volleyball coach. Dave, you saw Aaron up there the other day in the stands, and you were like, hey, I got to get out of practice, right?
I need a 5-minute break.
You know, I saw her, and I'm like, what is she doing? Is she, like, knacking or something up there? But I'm like, is that where, like, the good snacks are?
It always comes down to snacks.
Like, Aaron, where are you going?
It's always about, exactly.
Take some reps. Let's go. Okay, you started practice earlier in the week. Couple days in. How's it going in week one of fall camp for you guys?
You know, we're just happy to be in the gym, and the girls are showing it. They're super excited, lots of energy, a lot of smiles going on. And, you know, they're working hard. So it's been a really fun week. We always say you're having the most fun when you're competing and learning, and they're definitely doing both.
Dave, this is a true Heather Olmstead team in the fact that we asked Erin Livingston about expectations and, moving past the Sweet 16 and the Elite Eight, and she kept going back to we just got to focus on one match at a time. And I was like, Heather would be super, super proud of her right now. But you're not a player. And you're not, Heather doesn't need to know about this. What's the key?
Between us.
What's the key to taking those expectations from consistently getting to the Sweet 16 and going to that next step?
I'll first start out by, saying the coach's answer where, our goal is always going to be to win the WCC. It's always going to be to work towards the national championship. As far as expectations go, it really is more of stuff that you control. Hey, we expect you to work hard. We expect you to be a good teammate. We expect you to compete. But as far as the key, it's just going to be how much these girls want it. I think we have the talent in the gym, and, we just got to get after it, work hard, and it's all part of the process. And if the cards, fall the right way, we'll see.
Okay, certainly there's a lot of confidence and experience in returning setter Whitney Bauer, middle blocker Heather Niding, opposite Kate Grimmer, outside hitter Erin Livingston. So talk to me about that second outside spot. We'll start there, and kind of the battle of some freshmen who played a little bit last year and then some incoming freshmen as well for that second outside spot.
Yeah, so we've got a lot of talent in the gym. We've got, Elise and Sophia returning. We've got Eden and Natalie coming in. We still have, Alyssa. So we have a lot of talent, and they're just neck and neck, and they're battling. It's just really fun to watch and compete here in practice. It'll be fun to see how it pans out.
And then second middle blocker with Heather Niding. Who's competing for that spot?
Our three middles for that second spot are Whitney McEwen, Lernis, and she's, the elderly statesman, so to speak. And then you've got the newcomer in Kate Pryor, and Bree Albright is also coming back. And so, we'll see how it all shapes out, but we've got talent there as well.
He is the associate head coach of BYU women's volleyball, Dave Hyte, joining us live from practice. You're at home for the first 2 weeks, and maybe that's a little bit different than what you've grown accustomed to over the past few seasons. How will being at home the first 2 weeks help you and maybe alter the course of your season?
The first 2 weeks when we're scheduling, we have purpose behind it. We want to get strong opponents. We want to play in front of our fans where our kids are more comfortable. But we're excited for who we got coming in weekend number 1, weekend number 2. We'll be able to, put different players out there and see how they perform in matches. But we're thrilled with the schedule that we've got.
Ryder Duke, Wazoo first week. Wazoo area Macomber transferred from there. That's a fun matchup. Of course, Duke returning the game you had last year. Then Utah State, Heather's alma mater, Rob Nielsen. That's going to be great. Mountain West regular season champ. Cincinnati, what's up, Big 12 homie? And then Pitt. Well, the only regular season loss. They're coming to Provo. And then huge games. Georgia Tech and Ohio State and Atlanta at Utah. And, of course, UVU rounds out non-conference. This is a tough slate here. I'm really excited about week 2, obviously, with Pitt coming to town. That's going to be a primetime matchup on the day that football opens up with South Florida. So, hey, you can watch that game in the afternoon, then go to the Smith Fieldhouse, right, and watch a mega matchup with the Pitt Panthers.
Heather did a great job with the scheduling. She worked hard. She wanted a schedule that would really test our players.
Yeah.
And you can see that by weekend number 2 and weekend number 3. But it's just we've got opponents every single weekend that we're going to have to bring our best, and that's kind of what we want is, that consistent mentality of, we got to bring our A game every time.
Dave, how much of compiling this year's schedule, which we just documented is loaded with high-level opponents, was based on last year and the conversation that while BYU was 30-2, they didn't really have a ton of meat against top-level opponents. So how much of putting together this year's schedule was based on maybe some frustration with the lower RPI last year?
We talked about it, but to be honest, we didn't talk a lot about it. There's a lot that goes into scheduling, and we were trying to schedule, tougher teams last year, but it takes two to tango, and some people don't want to come in here and play us, and I understand that, and I get that, but you know, we do the best we can as coaches and try to put the best schedule together.
It's because you beat #1 Stanford a few years back. Nobody wants to come to the field house anymore.
Well, it's dangerous to play the Cougs, but if you want to, hey, in the Big 12, you're not going to have to worry about that. We're going to have hopefully Texas coming to Provo a couple times. That'll be great. Okay, I want to know, in your opinion, where the best seat to watch a BYU women's volleyball match is. Like, turn it around and point. And like if you weren't a coach and like men's season, you're showing up to watch a match, you get to pick where you're going. Where do you sit in there?
I would pick two different places depending on what your flavor is. So if you want to be close to the players, they're not up right now, but would be the seats behind the benches.
Okay.
I think that's fun for everyone. But as far as coaches and really watching the game and seeing the game, you're looking at just at the top, the north and south ends. And you could just see the whole court. But,
sure.
You know, maybe it has a lot to do with when we watch, we scout. That's how we scout. But, yeah, our season tickets in the men's games are not in those two spots. And so I'm just like, oh, there's the ref getting in the way. You know, just whatever different things there are.
All right, Dave. We were talking about snacks to begin this interview, so naturally we need to end talking about snacks. While you're watching a game in the Smithfield House, what's the best snack you have to have as you're watching volleyball?
I'm assuming you don't mean while I'm coaching.
Hey, if you want to eat snacks while you coach, whatever.
Probably sneak those gummies.
You know, I stick to water and gum during matches.
Okay.
If I'm watching though, I like popcorn. I like the Cougar tails here.
Yeah.
I'm putting a plug out for all the concessions.
Yep.
So.
Dave, it's great to talk with you, man. We wish you many wonderful snacks outside of actual coaching volleyball, but we certainly appreciate the well-thought-out insight into your team. Can't wait to watch this team get going in a few weeks.
Thank you to you both. Appreciate it. You guys do a great job with the TV. So.
Thank you, Dave. He is the associate head coach of BYU women's volleyball, Dave Hyte, hanging out in practice. Hopefully we gave him a nice break.
Yeah. An ice break or an ice break?
A nice both.
Either one.
I don't know.
Coming up, the Air Force pilot with the elite BYU helmet and photo.
And what do you think BYU has to prove this season? More of your responses to our question of the day. This is BYU Sports Nation.
Accidents don't just happen 9 to 5. They happen when you least expect them. The team at Siegfried & Jensen is here for you 24/7. Nights, weekends, every day, every hour. Really here for you. No matter when you call us, you'll speak to a real person and have access to the same expertise and personal attention as always, and get the legal help you need when you need it. Nights, weekends, every day, every hour, 24/7. Learn more at siegfriedandjensen.com.
Familiar with the BYU TV app?
Yes. I beg your pardon?
Sure, it's got great original TV shows. But it also gives you access to family films for free.
Wow. Awesome!
So gather around, grab some popcorn, and let us do the rest.
It'll be fun.
Watch some of your favorite films anytime, anywhere. With the free BYU TV app.
I like it.
There are things happening in Seaburg.
They care more about people spending money than they do about people getting sick.
If they're causing toxic pollution, it is everyone's fight. We can't just let them get away with it.
If anyone can figure this out, it's my brother.
Friends don't abandon each other. Fine. Be heroes.
I know what it's like to love someone so much you'd do anything for them.
Whatever happens, I'm glad we're facing it together.
Me too.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics.
Shows on demand. Make sure you download the free BYU TV and BYU Radio apps today. You don't even have to verify, a TV subscription. You just get it. Download the podcast as well. Subscribe, rate, and review.
Our question of the day, what does BYU football have to prove this season? This is an interesting conversation. If you missed it, we discussed it at the top of the show, but let's get to more of your responses right now in Voice of the Nation with Mark Stevens on Facebook, who says, they have to prove that they are ready to compete in the Big 12. This is a huge year for BYU, I believe. BYU needs to have a great year because, let's face it, to win on the Power 5 level consistently and compete yearly for Big 12 titles, they need to start getting more 4 to 5 star type kids. It's just reality.
Yeah, the hope is BYU can get more 4 stars and an occasional 5 star like a Kingsley Suamatia, whether that's transfer or straight out of high school. That'd be great. It's going to be tough to get 5 stars and guarantee $1 million NIL deals out of high school like Georgia and Alabama and Ohio State and whatnot and those car deals. Like, that's hard. I don't expect BYU to get 5 stars on the reg or maybe at all. If they get any, it's great. More 4-star kind of guys, more fits with BYU that can win, right? And I think getting into the Big 12 is obviously a game changer in recruiting, where you're talking to certain kids that weren't going to talk to you before.
Yeah, the Power 5 impact on recruiting has already taken shape to a degree for BYU, and the coaches have said as much. It's like, yeah, we're getting indoors that typically we haven't gotten. Like, they're taking more phone calls from us, is what they said.
That's great, and hopefully you get Britton Covey out of Timpview next time. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I don't want to lose a Britton Covey in the future.
You don't lose a few more guys
who wanted to come to BYU. Yeah, let's get Houston Haymouli out of high school.
Our Elite Voice of the Day, presented by Sundance Mountain Resort, comes from Bradley Perkins on Facebook. What does BYU have to prove? He says simply that they're better than Utah.
Okay. Well, let's win a P5 title before 11 years, and then we'll beat Utah.
It comes down to that for fans, right? Today's Rise and Shout Out, presented by Mountain America. This is super cool. The official credit union of BYU Athletics. I love what we're about to show you.
Shout out to Morgan Curridin, whose call sign is Mojo, stationed he's from North Carolina, stationed right now in the Middle East, wouldn't tell me which country, was visiting Nellis Air Force Base in Vegas for Red Flag, a large force exercise with jets from different countries. Look at this picture that his friend took of him with his BYU helmet and his freaking fighter jet.
It's amazing.
It was so cool. Okay, he wouldn't tell me where he's stationed.
Yo, I'm just going to do a low-level flyby.
Yeah,
Can you go ahead and snap a pic?
Hey,
with your incredible frame rate, catch my helmet.
That's elite. So cool. Best of luck with everything. And oh, by the way, the Jets tweeted this morning, no, Zach Wilson, this isn't what we were referring to when we said fly.
Take flight.
Take flight.
Coming up the summer with Top Gun Maverick 2, like, there's never been a better picture.
Brand association. Yeah.
So great. All right, our thanks to today's guests, Chris Brooks and Dave Hyte of BYU Women's Volleyball.
Sorry, Dennis.
For Jarom, I'm Spencer. Shout out to Sierra Parker. See you tomorrow on BYU Sports Nation. Go Cougs.